We're with Dan Clark. Art of Significance is his last book. He's written a bunch. I'm not going through your whole resume, but we're going to be all over the place in this conversation. I love it. Because I fly into Utah. I was doing a speech. He picks me up, which is definitely my most expensive Uber I've ever had. And we had 5 hours that I just cherish because the advice, the guidance, thank you. I mean, I can't believe how much I learned from you that day and how much you gave. And this is my kind of guy. I mean, you were married, I'm married, so I couldn't marry you, but there's all man love here, man. And thank you for being you, because I've been following you now on YouTube, and some of the motivation and just some of the smartsmanship, I call it, is just outstanding.
Thanks.
Welcome to my home.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
It's great to be here in New York now.
It's a long flight, man, and you're here.
I tell you, to get live belly to belly with Brandon Steiner, that's a bucket list item that most of my circle of influence would love to do. So thank you.
Thank you. I can't wait to spend more time in Utah.
And I've been to his house now, and it's a long distance phone call from the master bedroom suite to his kitchen. So regardless of how much money you make, that's probably your biggest bill of the month is your telephone bill.
Yeah, that, and I don't have to always see my kids every day when I don't want to. There's places to hide in that house. Yeah, it seems to be. But we seem to be managing it okay, and it's been fun. What I love about my house is that it seems to be a place where everybody can kind of congregate and hang out, from the neighborhood. Kids come and play, basketball with me and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, and your guest bathroom, it was awesome. The towels in there were so fluffy. I had a hard time getting my suitcase closed. So
my wife's very big on the guest room. You ever go to someone's house, like you really feel like you're in a stranger's bathroom, and it's not good. I mean, my wife is like big on the other bathrooms in the house being better than our bathrooms. I go to the guest bathrooms and shower and go there because they're better than my own bathroom.
That's so funny. So I'm speaking for Marriott.
Am I crazy, or you go to someone's house and like?
I'm speaking for Marriott Hotel Corporation. I'm about 10 minutes into the speech and Bill Marriott's on my front row. I'm like, oh my gosh, Mr. Marriott, it's such an honor to have you here. I said, I know you have access to all the greatest hotel properties in the world, but if you're ever in Utah and you want a home cooked meal, I want you to stay at my house because you're going to feel right at home. Every single towel and robe in my guest bathroom says Marriott Hotel.
I love that.
You laughed out loud.
I thought that we had all monogram stuff as a kid growing up, because we didn't have a whole lot of money, but our towels had the S and the ashtrays and everything. But that was the Sheraton. So that was a very, very big downer when I realized those were a monogram for Steiner. But it was all good. What are you up to these days? You always have a different angle when you're speaking. That's amazing. You're coaching other speakers and doing a lot of keynotes. But what's keeping you busy these days?
That's why you're one of my heroes. My book, The Art of Significance, it really started with the conversation that I had with one of my football teammates. I played football for 13 years, and I was paralyzed in a tackling drill. I was paralyzed for 14 months. 16 doctors told me I wouldn't get better, and as I started to get better, I was asked to speak. That's how I became a speaker and an author. But I had a telephone conversation with one of my teammates. He was drafted in the NFL in the second round by the Eagles. After 2 years with the Eagles, he's traded to my Oakland Raiders. After 4 years in the league, playing at the highest level, Pro Bowl status, one day he walks out of practice, quits, never to play again. Why? He loved being a football player, but he hated playing football. He got what he wanted, but he hated what he got. He loved the celebrity perks and the fame and fortune that came by living this life of success, which we all have bought into. Nice house, nice car, nice title, nice income. But because his inner voice and his true purpose in life was misaligned with who he was and what he was doing, he would never live a life of significance, and he would die with his music still in him. So that caused me to start thinking about the difference between successful people getting what they want and significant people who want what they get. And that's where you and I connected immediately. You give me this amazing tour of this beautiful, gorgeous mansion. And yet every part of the conversation was, I have dreams, without you saying this in your humility, I have dreams for sale. You give a piece of memorabilia away to somebody as a thank you, they hang it up on their wall, they see the picture, and it immediately triggers the entire story behind it, and it fuels their fire and keeps their inspiration alive. And what we know about motivation is that inspired people do not have to be motivated. So when you give a piece of memorabilia away, there's two parts of that gift. Who gave it to you, and what story of inspiration does that photograph represent that keeps me fired up saying, wait a minute, he is more than a successful athlete or a successful musician. He is doing something with his platform to be significant. So when I understand your interviews and your dear friendship with Mariano and all these great athletes, the reason why they cherish their friendship with you is the exact same reason I cherish my friendship with you. And that's because our entire conversation is about how can I help you become more significant. That's why I love you and I honor you. And it's more than just blowing smoke.
I tell my friends that are doctors, you got to want to treat people and help people get better more than being a doctor. You got to want to teach kids more than being a teacher. And it's a very fine line, but a lot of people have trouble with that.
Exactly.
And if you are having trouble with that, it's time to maybe go take a step back and find out why you're here. Two most important days of your life, the day you were born and the day you realize why you were born, why you're here, and what you're here to do. Because we all are here to do something, and it's not something mediocre. So if you're doing something, be extraordinary and significant. Why just settle for good, great, or even successful? And my big problem is I live in a neighborhood with a lot of successful people, and it becomes a deterrent. It's a roadblock to what's really important, which is being significant and extraordinary.
Absolutely.
And I never had in my mind any interest in being great or good.
But that's why you became it.
Yeah,
As
no
a
interest
result,
in
it's
it.
a residual impact of the way you think. Let's talk about that for a second. So I'm in a conversation with my family. I have one son and three daughters. And my
beautiful
daughter,
kids, by the way.
Yeah,
You're underplaying it, by the
yeah,
way.
yeah.
Probably your wife's looks, I'm sure, but
absolutely not.
I mean, your kids are happening, though.
Oh no,
they are happening.
They're so
right.
my daughter, Miss Teen Utah and blah blah blah, and I've trained her. Someone says, "Nicola, you look so beautiful." She goes, "Thanks, I look just like my dad." It's a done deal. It's a no-brainer.
I like that. Good, smart. I like that.
But we're in a conversation, and it's teary-eyed conversation, where she's talking to me about one of her girlfriends who lost her job, got divorced, and was diagnosed with some brutal illness, all in the same month. And she says, "Dad, she hit rock bottom." And I started thinking, you know what? Most of us at some point in our life have used that phrase to describe our predicament. When something goes south, our relationships go south, our businesses are failing, the economy's brutal, the market dives. We always say, I hit rock bottom. And the conversation was so phenomenal because in this flash of inspiration, which is about the difference between success and significance, I said, no one ever hits rock bottom. You hit rock foundation. You hit rock beliefs. You hit the core values, the baseline core values on which you were raised. If your company goes south, you hit the bottom line governing principles on which your company has been founded. So it really does boil down to the strength of your belief. So the stronger your belief and the deeper your conviction in all the right things allows you to be resilient, adapt to change, and always bounce back. So if you understand that concept, then you'll understand something that you actually said at the beginning of this podcast. I want to hear from where you are. Where are you? Well, this morning, when I hired an Uber ride to take me from the Delamar Hotel in Greenwich, Connecticut to your beautiful home, I had to enter in my current location. Think about what most leadership gurus get us to do. Set goals, begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to be? What's your 5-year plan? I'm like, that is such a limiting belief. What we have to do is first ask and answer ourselves, where am I right now? Because if you lie about where you are, the directions won't work. And where you are is based fundamentally on what you believe, what are your core values, what are your governing principles. In my book, The Art of Significance, you should buy it, I need the money. In my book, The Art of Significance, I've distilled it into 12.
I love this book, by the way. I killed that book.
I love it.
I couldn't give that book away because I have so many scratches and
No,
notes
I love
on
it. But I distilled.
That book could have been 3 books, by the way.
Well, what I did is I challenged the status quo. In medicine, we understand that prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. So we have to ask the right questions in order to get the right answers. But in our business, and since we become friends, what I challenge everybody to do is question the answers. That's the only way we can get from where we are to where we want to be. And the answers have been limiting for so long. Begin with the end in mind. We bought into this. I've lived in Utah forever, and I've been friends with Stephen Covey, God rest his soul, since 1975. Obviously, he writes The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Then he comes out with another book, a sequel, The 8th Habit. I immediately emailed him, calm down. We don't need any more freaking habits. I'm still working on the 7 that you illuminated originally. And what I've decided, with all due respect, is that when you begin with the end in mind, it's a limiting belief, because what it does is it forces us to focus on a destination that's impressive, do our best to manage people, and reward results, which means you've done a good job. I'm going to lose 22 pounds. Once you do, then you celebrate and gain 30 back.
Every time.
Every time.
But
But if you begin with the why in mind.
Yeah, but here's one thing, though. I'm a big fan of knowing where you are now.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody's honest. Everybody bullshits themselves.
You got
because
it.
they got a story. And
Oh,
most
yeah.
of those stories are just not true. But when I ask people about wanting to be extraordinary and great, I ask them, I say, listen, if you're a back surgeon, have you met the greatest back surgeons on the planet? If you're interested in being the best, you got to know who the best is. You got to know who's setting the trend. Who is the person, if you have all the money in the world that could do anything and you got a back problem, who would you go see?
Not the guy who graduated last in his class.
It could be.
No.
It
The greatest surgeon
He
on
just
the
may not have been
planet.
done that well in school, like myself. I made the top 90% of my class possible.
You're so
I
funny.
struggled, but I mean,
Everybody thinks in
and
my
everybody
circle of
counted my
influence-
ass out. And let me tell you something. I got my education in spite of Syracuse University.
I agree.
I mean, I have no problem with Syracuse. Loved everything I learned
guys
there.
I went to
But
school
the
with-
learning started the day after I left there, and it was not a bad thing. It was a
So
great,
true.
right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing I challenge people is like, oh, you want to be a sports marketer? Really? You want to be an entrepreneur? Have you watched every Bill Gates interview article that's written? Have you watched every Mark McCormick book if you want to be a sports marketer and learn everything there is about sports marketing since the beginning of time? No. How are you going to be the best if you don't even know who the best is and what you're trying to be? You want to have the best hair salon, right?
Yeah.
Who has the best hair salon?
Carmela.
In the planet.
She was in your
Not
office
only
today,
here, have you
yeah.
gone to 10 cities
Yeah.
and said, where's the best hair salon, the most expensive? And all you need is one little idea in one of those salons that could change everything for your salon. One little idea that could change your view on sports marketing. And at least you know what you're going to do and who you got to beat. I was like a little nothing. This guy, Bob Wolf, representing Larry Bird, all those guys.
Oh,
He
yeah,
was
I
the
know
big
the name.
maca, the
Oh,
big
yeah.
agent. Great agent. I figured out how to connive myself. I said, I got to go see this guy. I got to go see his office. And I did. And one of the things I learned is that, you're going to be in sports marketing, you got to have a great feeling office. You got to showcase your players in your office unilaterally. So you never walked in one of my offices where it didn't feel like home. And
Oh,
a big,
yeah.
And that's what I learned from Bob, amongst other things. But the question I ask all of you is, who is doing what you're doing and is the best at it? And if you study that person like there's no tomorrow, because when we were younger, you actually had to go to the library, which was,
yeah.
God. But now you just, a couple of clicks and a pick, and you can find anything you want. I watched you on YouTube 2, 3, 4 hours. I mean, it's amazing if you get to watch Dan on a YouTube speech.
Thanks.
I mean, it's really
We
outstanding.
grew up
but-
where text was an actual book in a library. We grew up where a tweet was something that Barbara Walters gave her pet dog. And now look how we've morphed into this
Exactly.
high-tech world.
But I mean, the world's moving fast, but I'm cool
yeah.
with that too. I'm not. Now, do you believe in the millennial thing, or do you believe that there's a change?
Yeah, but what we were talking about off camera today was your wise eyes versus their fresh eyes. There's an amalgamation of both generations, and what we need to do is come together and figure out how we can better each other's with the attitude that when the water in the lake goes up, all the boats rise together. There are
Do
specific
you like the millennial?
formulas.
Do you like the
Oh,
millennial?
I love it because they have so much curiosity and energy, and they're tech savvy, and they have this amazing energy to change the world. They want meaningful jobs, and they want their lives to matter. Well, so do we. What we have to do is stop talking about cultural diversity and start talking about cultural commonality. Instead of focusing in on what makes us different, let's focus in on what makes us the same. We just celebrated Martin Luther King Day. I had an opportunity to interview his wife, Coretta Scott King, on 2 different occasions. One of the greatest interviews of my life. Heard all the stories. Well, with his nonviolent protesting, amalgamation of what Gandhi taught us about, the way that he actually initiated his freedom in India. That mentality alone was, let's focus in on what makes us the same God who made you made me too. Well, you take the religious connotations out of that statement and put it into the human connection. Steiner, you're famous for saying, how can I help you? We are true brothers in this. What can we do to come together? So with all due respect to all the huge celebrities that you've interviewed, that you have memorabilia that you sell, The reason why they trust you is because you don't give a rat's wackazoodle about what they do. You've been able to connect at who they are, but more importantly, why they do what they do. So I'm reading in between the lines. You track down Wolf. I want to see his office. I want to see everything that he knows about sports marketing. Now, what you really discovered was why he did what he did, because that's what fuels you.
I want to see why Mariano did the cutter and how he became. I mean, the one thing listen, I love the celebrity, love all the athletes. I'm not going to lie and say it hasn't been a huge boost and opportunity and fun. But what I did at an early age was, after I got through all that little hoopla, I want to know how Roger Staubach became Roger Staubach and how he built this real estate company. I want to know how Walter Payton became the greatest runner of all time. I want to know how Hank Aaron hit all those home runs. Yep. And then once I got a little comfortability with the athlete, I went for the secret to the sauce. And that's all I've been a dog without a bone about is, Hank, how the hell did you get through having to stay at all these other hotels, traveling? There was all these issues between white and black and threatening you for your life, but how the hell did you hit all those home runs?
755.
He says, Brandon, I resent you even bringing up the home runs. I was a 5-tool player. That's how I hit all those home runs. I played the entire game. I wasn't trying to hit home runs. I was just trying to get on base, hits, look at my total bases, look at my RBIs, look at my extra bases, look at my arm, look at my fielding percentage. And I'm like, yeah, you were a complete player. And by being a complete player, you excelled at this one aspect, but it didn't take away from being a complete player. I think that's true in business too.
See, Roger Staubach, so I became friends with him. I spoke for his corporation a few times, know his daughters, know his son, Jeff. You visit his office. He developed so much of Fort Worth, Texas. I had one of my offices there in those days. You go into Roger's office, and we talked about this off air. He has no sports memorabilia anywhere in his office. None. Nothing. You walk into the lobby of his company. His office is upstairs. You walk into the lobby. There's one plexiglass display of the actual football and the actual picture of Drew Pearson catching the Hail Mary pass, him actually throwing the Hail Mary pass, both photographs which you have. He has the signed football, and that's the only piece of sports memorabilia. He was the Heisman Trophy winner. I said, why? He said, because that's just what I did. It's not who I am. He said, I received the finest education on the planet from the Naval Academy.
And he'll tell you that twice on Sunday.
Exactly. And that's what he's most proud of. He's a father. He's a devout Catholic. He is a businessman. He's highly educated. Oh, and by the way, he just played football at the highest level.
Were you impressed when you were in my office this morning? It was interesting because I hadn't thought about it, like what I had on my wall, but I had the Hail Mary, which reminds me, don't give up till the clock is over. I had the Herm Edwards, the fumble in the Meadowlands, which means anything could happen at any time. Don't stop, because the most crazy, insane thing could happen as long as you're awake and ready for it to happen. That's what's on my wall. And then you got the picture of Rizzuto and Jeter, and then you got the picture of me and Jordan.
You got it.
Which
because the story,
I kicked Jordan's butt.
Absolutely, took him to the hoop in a basketball clinic. See, and that again validates why you do what you do. The picture remembers when. The song remembers when. What you have here, my friend, is so much more than just a sports memorabilia collection, sales, marketing company. You are at the forefront of having people regurgitate the inspiration that they need to carry on, because if we're not failing a few times, it means we're not pushing ourselves hard enough. And you don't judge a man when he's up, you judge a man when he's down. And when you're down, you need inspiration. Oh my gosh. Herm Edwards picked up a fumble. This was the kneel down. He was supposed to kneel down. He doesn't kneel down. He fumbles. Edwards picks it up, rambles for a touchdown, changes the game.
It's insane.
It's all in the picture.
But it's not a surprise when you meet Herm Edwards.
Oh, no.
I mean, what a job he's done at Arizona State. But, I mean, he's just a bundle of motivation. But you see it wasn't a turn on again. And that's the thing. You can't turn that on and off, that kind of thing. You could see that everything he does, he's going to be great at it. That's amazing. What do you tell? We have a lot of young entrepreneurs that watch this show, and there's nervousness. Some of them still in college. What are some of the initiation stuff that you want to really build? You talk about the rock bottom, or just the stuff that the cornerstone stuff that you recommend when you're younger that you need to do to have the wherewithal to be entrepreneurial.
The first thing we have to do is become disciplined and follow a system. Statistics indicate. The Brooks Company, I knew Bill Brooks very well, God bless him, he passed away. They interviewed 12,000 sales professionals, and they discovered that if you meticulously follow and duplicate a time-tested sales system, you increase your closing rate to 93%. If you default and just wing it, it defaults to about 42%. So what we have to do is first find the system, the time-tested system. It's like you're authenticating the autographs, the memorabilia. That is so critically important. But there's a system. We have to be disciplined and humble enough to find the system and trust the system. So in my 12 laws, what
Almost
I did in
kind of
my
like football, like that's
exactly,
right?
you know, and the rules don't change. You complain to the referee. No, you go 10 yards, you get a first down. If you spend more than 15 seconds in the end zone, you get flagged for excessive celebration. So it's all about the journey. It's about the 99 yards that you went through. Goals are only an excuse for the game. We play the game in between the goals. If the only satisfaction we get out of life is a paycheck every 2 weeks, you don't like practice. You don't love practice, and you'll never be good in a game. So what we have to do is focus in on a disciplined system. So in my book, The Art of Significance, what I did is I identified the 12 most common principles of success that are debatable, and I threw them under the bus, and I replaced them with what I call the 12 highest universal laws of life-changing leadership in sequential order. Number one universal law is your answer. It's obedience. Let me just share my parable of the kite, which is so powerful for all ages, millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers.
The kite.
The parable of the kite. It answers your question in a story. A father's in a park with his young boy. They're flying a kite. Beautiful day. His dad says to the boy, "What holds the kite up in the sky?" His son says, "A wind." His dad says, "No, the wind doesn't hold the kite up, the string does." The little guy scratches his head. He says, "Daddy, the string doesn't hold the kite up, the string holds the kite down." His dad smiles and says, "If you think so, let go of the string." Little guy lets go of the string. The kite flutters from the sky. Wind blows it to wherever it wants to take it. He no longer controls the destiny of that kite. And now the little guy starts chasing the string. He's like, "What a freaking drag." He finally steps on the string, once again commits to holding tightly onto that string, and the kite again climbs and becomes what it was meant to be, a kite flying up in the sky. In this metaphor, the kite represents our dreams, our goals, what matters to us, our desired results, our scheduled and projected outcome. The wind represents the opposition in all things. We have darkness to appreciate the light. We have sickness to appreciate health. We have death to appreciate the sanctity of life. We have justice to appreciate mercy. When someone gives us a second chance, only the people that are in a position to hold us accountable and force feed us justice are in a position to give mercy. Opposition in all things. The string represents the rules, the governing principles, and these 12 highest universal laws that we must commit to obeying, because once we disobey one of those laws, our marriage goes south, our businesses fail. We never kick off our entrepreneurial idea because we've faltered on our commitment to obeying the specific laws and following the time-tested system of sales, system of success that we originally identified. When the kid lets go of the string, it represents the temptations of the world. Hanging out with the wrong friends, let go of the string.
Take easy street.
Take the easy street. We don't have to get back to work. We can stay out an hour and a half for lunch. We don't have to keep our commitment. No one's around. Him chasing the string represents his conscience. Every single human being born into this world was born with a conscience. So think about this. If that's true, which I believe it is, our conscience will never fail us. Only our desire to follow it decreases as we continue to do the wrong thing. So if you and your staff today, if we walk into your building, your amazing office, and it stinks so bad that we're repulsed and we immediately kick into gag reflex, our eyes are bleeding, our noses are ringing, we're a chocolate mess, and we stay in this smelly environment for 5 to 10 minutes, suddenly it no longer smells anymore. It's become the new normal. We become desensitized. What's happening in our literature? What's happening in our movies? What's happening in our friendships? We're desensitizing to the fact that, significance isn't important. Let's just cheat. Let's try to find get by, find the shortcut. So the kid chasing the string represents his conscience kicked in. I should have never let go of the string. Once he recommits by holding onto that string to obeying the law, what we learn is a fundamental principle of management, of leadership, and of parenting. The kid now realizes that no longer does he need supervision. No longer does he have to take his dad to fly the kite in the park. He now knows what he needs to do to make his dream come true, to control the kite against the opposition and the temptations of the world. Which means, from a religious perspective, how many people stop going to synagogue because they blame the rabbi? How many of us stop going to our religious tradition, our church, and we blame the bishop, we blame the pastor? In other words, we're saying it's his law instead of it's God's law, and he just happens to be the messenger. So we've got to stop obeying people.
Are we a little bankrupt on that area?
Yeah, we are. And I want to interview you about that because you're so profound about faith and the lack thereof. But let me just finish this analogy. What this little kid realizes is that no longer does he have to obey his dad. We get in trouble when we obey people instead of the highest law. And what brings us together is when you're obeying this higher law and I'm obeying the same highest law. So now we connect at the faith, at the discipline, at the conviction level, because we're aimed at the same highest law. So if you offend me, I still obey God's law. I'm not going to let you get in my way. And what happens when we're trying to counsel our children? Oh, Dad, it's not what you said, it's how you say it. I'm like, it's not my freaking law. I'm trying to counsel you to be the best human being you can possibly be and make responsible decisions when I'm not around. I got better things to do than babysit you or worry about you going on a senior trip with your beautiful girlfriends in Newport Beach. I want to send you on a plane and say, I trust you because I know you're going to make the right responsible decisions because you understand the higher law. So that's just the first law of the art of significance, where we focus in on the reality that in order for us to put a man in space and bring him home safely, to put a man on the moon, all we have to do is watch the movie Hidden Figures about Katherine Johnson, African-American woman who became the hero of NASA because when John Glenn was launched into space to orbit our Earth 3 times, Euler's law, E-U-L-E-R-S, it was discovered and created and identified way back in the 17th century. But Katherine Johnson, when all the highest thinking, greatest geniuses in space technology, aerospace formulas, when they could not come up with the formula, Katherine Johnson remembered Euler's law. And what does she say in the movie? All we have to do is follow this time-tested system, and it's a mathematical algorithm that worked in the 17th century. It works in 2019. And because there's so much order in the universe, if we obey the universal laws, we circumvent all these failures and we close the gap from point A to point B, shorten our learning curve, and it allows us to, now that we are disciplined to obey, we mitigate temptation, we manage our change. If our relationships start going south,
increase your trust.
We know what to do immediately. It's like driving down the highway. If I miss the exit to Scarsdale, I know that I need to take the next one instead of keep going down the road the wrong way. Trust, all those things. Let me interview you for a second, brother.
Hold on one second. What was it? The banana I gave you that brought? I mean,
you're
Ben,
awesome.
The energy level here. I'm like, let's go.
No, but with your book, Live
By the
on
way,
Purpose.
what's the take? I need to hear from you out there. Give me a takeaway here on some of this that he just talked about. I mean, give me your takeaway. What'd you learn from this? Because
people from some of my favorite places like Toadsuck Ferry, Arkansas, Wawa, Ontario,
By the way,
Boring,
Ben,
Oregon.
any interesting people coming from any interesting
Cut and
places
Shoot,
there?
Texas,
We got a couple
Alligator,
gift cards we're giving out here.
Mississippi.
Like, where are you from? Where are you out there? And by the way, give me your takeaway, what you learned here. I love to share the lessons of what you got out of this, because it's always different. It's amazing how sometimes you talk about something and you get 5 different views on what you talked about, and 4 of them I never really thought about. So I always learn a lot from the listeners when they put down, Brandon, when you talked about this, it really sparked this. I'm like, wow, I never even thought about that.
Let me shift. So one of the things that transcends our relationship. I love and respect you so much as a businessman, as a father, as a family man, as a community guy, all of those. But at the heart and soul of that, in your book, Live on Purpose, you highlight 2 things that most of us forget about. And in our conversation in your car on our drive over here, what happens? You say, people, they listen to podcasts, they pay their $10,000 to go to the Tony Robbins sessions. You should come to mine. Yeah, Tony Robbins has nothing on me. We spend all this money and time and investment on becoming the best business professionals that we can become, men and women. We invest so much money in personal, professional growth, but we forget about faith and we forget about parenting, which are two key ingredients that you brought up in
That's
Live
my
on
argument.
Purpose.
I'm
telling you what.
I go in the middle of the room when I'm speaking. I say, "What's winning for you?" I want to do this for my family, my kids. I said, "Let me ask you something. In the last 5 years, you've been to conferences? Oh yeah. Read a lot of business books? Yeah. Sales conferences? You stay work at late? Yeah. How many books have you read about parenting?" Because we were talking about it. Your neighbor's not coming to you and saying, you're not that good a parent.
I know.
Your in-laws come in, they'll never be invited back if they tell you how shitty a parent you are.
Yeah, got it.
So it's like, where are you getting that guidance from? And do you not want to be an extraordinary parent? Because show me a successful person whose kids are completely messed up. How successful really are they?
Exactly.
Right?
And that brings up to the 12 highest universal laws. They apply to every part of our lives, professionally and personally. For example, from a parenting perspective, I love to ask people, how many of us try to choose our children's friends? And most of us are guilty. And what happens when we try to choose our children's friends? It forces them to have two sets of friends. Those they really hang out with and those they drag home for our approval. That's why we have so many mothers crying. I didn't know my daughter was so promiscuous. I didn't know my son was in a street gang. I didn't know my child was involved in drugs and alcohol.
But a lot of parents will focus on the school their kids get into, spend hours, money, dollars, the clothes they wear. And I don't think you should choose your kids' friends, but you should be paying attention who your kids' friends are. Critical, right?
Exactly.
And
because
I think most parents put more emphasis on the neighborhood they live on, the school they go to. But who your kids hanging out with is going to have a more profound effect than all of it.
And that's what I bring up in my book throughout the entire page. Yeah,
critical.
We become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most.
It's critical.
Which means if you hang around with 5 broke people, you're going to become the 6th. If you hang around with 5 negative, whining people, you're going to become the 6th. I love analogies. When you put a hard-to-catch horse in the same field with an easy-to-catch horse, most of the time you end up with 2 hard-to-catch horses. In the human experience, when you put a healthy child in the same room with a sick child, most of the time you end up with 2 sick children. Moral of the story? In order to be disciplined, healthy, and significant, we must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with extraordinary human beings. I was 1 flight away from spending belly to belly, up close and personal, intimate time with Brandon Steiner. Why would I miss that opportunity of a lifetime? And it has nothing to do with the flight, even though I'm speaking for Citadel in Greenwich tonight, so they paid for my flight.
My only downside of that is I thought you were coming right from the airport to my house, and instead you stayed at the hotel, which was definitely a downgrade. But
no, it was. Trust me.
I was ready to stay up, and
that's why.
But the problem is we were never going to sleep.
Well, that's why Brandon can never run for president of the United States because his wife refuses to let him move into a smaller home.
We would have been up all night.
I know.
There's no question.
But let's talk. So law number 4. Trust predictability, in my book of The Art of Significance, trust predictability beyond hope and faith. So let's talk about this.
Let's talk about that.
Faith without works is not faith at all. So it's back to identifying why you do it. Once we answer why, figuring out the how to is pretty simple. But French philosopher Blaise Pascal, he said this: too many live their lives hoping to be happy, but because they only hope, they never really are. Too many people are waiting for someone to ask them to the senior prom, and they've never even taken the time to learn how to dance. So I'm in Brandon's house today. He's a busy man. I appreciate your time. He excuses himself for me, takes a call. I won't drop any names. I won't drop the CEO title that he is of a major Fortune 500 corporation. But I can't help
whose call I missed because we were rapping and talking.
But I couldn't help but not eavesdropping, but I couldn't help but understand the in-between lines of the conversation. It was about trusting predictability, and it's famous for you. You said it 3 times on the call. You've said it to me. I don't want to be around people who only talk. I want people who take action, who do what we talk about and put it into practice.
Because this guy left a job.
Huge paid job.
Huge.
CEO. 9
figures.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're talking a double-digit millions per year. Leaves this job, to a completely risky proposition. And basically sits there and says, I got this.
And you said only a guy from Brooklyn would leave that much money on the table.
Well, anybody who's extraordinary and successful, it all starts in Brooklyn. But that's another pod. But at the end of the day, what I loved is that he said, it's going to take me 5 years, and this is what's going to happen. And I'm like, you sure? I mean, you're leaving one of the most prestigious companies, jobs, made all the way through. He goes, I could do this. I'm going to do this. This is going to be huge. I always wanted to do this. And sure enough, not to the day, but 5 years later, everything he said was going to happen. And it wasn't $10-20 million swing. It's
Exactly.
hundreds of millions. And that's amazing.
And because you could trust his predictability, which is based on he's going to do what he says he's going to do, then faith and hope take care of themselves. Hope is not a method. And too many people live their lives with faith. Well, faith is believing that the sun's going to come up tomorrow because it did today. It's about predictability. I have faith that you're going to make the right decisions because so far you have. And when you haven't, you've immediately admitted and you've corrected that, deepened your thought process and your belief system so that the next time you hit rock bottom, you're resilient and you come back. It's all about trusting predictability.
Love that.
You see why I'm so adamant about the art of significance. I would hope that you join my tribe. My website's danclark.com, and I'm unashamedly dropping that so you can keep in touch with me too. Because
it's underneath. It's underneath right now. He's posted.
Oh, really?
Yeah, danclark.com. No question. Ben, is that right underneath there?
Well, do you want to put like
people
my
already
bank account or
Googled
anything
you.
I can donate?
By the way,
Come
the
on,
people
man.
that are watching, they're like, they'll stalk you. They'll be all over you watching, as they should. I teach them to do that. I want them to do that.
I have a single
But
daughter.
what-
Do you have anybody who wants to marry her? I mean,
Your
you
daughter's
guys got some
gorgeous. Don't be
serious
throwing
talent.
her out there. She's not going
Come
to
on.
like that. And that's another thing. There's some crazies out there. But let me ask you a question now that really gets me thinking. Why do so many people stop at just being successful and great? What is the holdup? Because I mean, they're so much further from where they are, where they started.
Because
but why?
because they begin with the end in mind. That's just a limiting belief. Think
This
about
is
this.
much better than I ever thought it was going to be. And
Think
that's
about
good
this. I don't want to badmouth anyone. I've interviewed him. I've spent time with Buzz Aldrin. We went to the Army-Navy football game. He was the second man to walk
What
on the
was
moon.
he like?
Within about 3 to 4 years after he walked on the moon, he was homeless, alcoholic, and divorced.
Really?
He began with the end in mind. I've walked on the moon. What else is there to do? I've won the World Series. What am I going to do? I've blown all my money being this celebrity, and now 78% of professional athletes are bankrupt within the first 3.5 years after retirement. What we have to do is stop beginning with the end in mind. Like we facetiously said, my goal is to lose 22 pounds. Well, then you celebrate and you gain 30 back because you finally made it to your destination, which is impressive. Replace that with beginning with the why in mind.
So do you think, we were talking to Carmel earlier, we were just kind of consulting with her. She owns a hairstylist in Mamaroneck. Good place, by the way. She wants to pick up another 150 to 200 customers. Is that not the right thinking?
No, it is. It is. But the reason why they would come to her salon
is the focus.
And the way she makes them feel and the conversation, and we need to feel wanted, important, lovable, capable, and that we succeed. There's only so much you can do with hair. I'm losing my hair right here. I'm growing into places I don't even need it. My only hope is that the hair in my right ear will grow long enough I can comb it up over the top of my head, fake everyone out. She says you're one of her top clients. I'm like, your haircut takes like 13 seconds. What else are you going to do?
Sad.
She goes, snip, snip, snip. You're good to go. What else can I do? You go to her for a different reason than just being able to handle a pair of scissors. So what we have to do is say, we want another 150 to 200 peoples whose lives we can change, who we can galvanize as a community. If there's a fundraiser, they trust me, I trust them. We're at a completely different relational level where I can actually invite them to this fundraiser and I know they'll support me because of who we are outside the salon.
The salon needs to be a community.
You got it. It has to be a community where you have more in common. I'm going to come and be around you because of the conversations we have. If I come into Carmela's salon and all we do is whine and gossip, I'm like, I don't like this. But if I go in there and she has a Brandon Steiner video, a Dan Clark video, something while you're getting your hair done and here's
the
a
game.
screen or the game on.
Game.
You see? And you're like, wow. And you create this environment. Talk about Wolf's environment that you've recreated here.
Talk about videos, but I mean, I'm never doing this again. But I must be on United Airlines now. This video of me doing some kind of talk about something, and I mean, I've gotten so many. I'm not doing that again. Like I don't.
No,
don't
you
put,
should.
Carmelo, do not put my video on in your salon. People are not moved by this. Like it's not like. My kids are killing me. My friend was on the plane, saw you on there. Why are you on the plane on a video? What's wrong with you, Dad?
That's so funny.
Like, I'm sorry I'm embarrassing you. I'm sorry.
No, that's so funny.
Do you embarrass your kids? Are your kids
Absolutely.
My
it
kids
started way back in the day. Talk about parenting. We've got to figure out clever ways to counsel our kids and their gentlemen callers. So I say to my 3 beautiful daughters, when they started to date, I'm like, let me answer the door when the guy shows up. No, Dad. I'm like, come on. Knock on the door. They roll their eyes. I'm like, hey, buddy, welcome. You're here to take out my daughter? Yeah. I said, come here. We need to have a talk. So I can see his heart pounding out of his chest.
Already your daughter's not happy with you.
And my daughters are like, oh, brother. And I come in and I say, listen, buddy, we don't have a lot of rules around here, but I need your help. The entire time you're out of my sight with my daughter, I want you to whistle and clap. Because if I know where your lips and hands are at all times, you can stay here till Thursday. And now they go downstairs and they're snuggling and they're watching a movie on the big screen. They're doing all the things. I'm not going to go check up on them. I trust my daughters. But as I start to walk down the stairs, I don't even have to show my face. I don't even have to turn the corner. And sure enough, the guys will start going. 10 years later, I'll see them in a store, in a mall. And they're like, hey, Mr. Clark. I'm like, you remember that when you have a daughter. There's clever ways for us to communicate with our kids.
There was a story you told. I love that story, by the way. And that's clever. There's a story about the dog.
Puppies for Sale?
Puppies for Sale. You got to tell me that. And that's a famous story.
Yeah, it was made into a film at Paramount Studios starring Jack Lemmon. I wrote it when I was 13 years of age as part of a speech essay competition. It first aired in the Sundance Film Festival in my backyard.
Let me tee this up for 1 second. Yeah. If you forget everything we've talked about at this point, and hopefully thank you for staying with us, and you're on a pod, you may want to pull over on this one because it's my favorite story. And if you can forget everything we talked about, I love this story. And this is a story, by the way, you're carrying forward because it's a great one.
Thanks.
Love this one.
A store owner was tacking a nail in a sign above his store door which read, Puppies for Sale. Signs like that have a way of attracting small children, and sure enough, a little boy appears at the store owner's side. He says, how much are you going to sell the puppies for? The store owner assured the little boy that they were very, very good dogs, and he didn't expect to let any of them go for anything less than $35 to $50. To that, the little boy reaches in his pocket. He pulls out some change. He counts it for a minute. He looks up at the store owner and he says, well, sir, I have $2.37. Can I look at the little puppies? The store owner smiles. He says, sure, son, and he whistles. Out of the kennel comes Lady, the mama dog, running down the aisle of his store, followed by 5 little teeny balls of fur, one puppy lagging considerably behind the others. Immediately, the little boy singles out the lagging, limping puppy, says, what's wrong with that little dog? The store owner says, we took that dog to the veterinarian. The doctor examined it, discovered it didn't have a hip socket. It would always limp. It would always be slow. To that, the little guy gets excited. He says, that's the little puppy I want to buy. Store owner says, nah, you don't want to buy that little dog. If you really want him, I'll just give him to you. Now the little guy gets ticked off. He gets right into the face of the store and he points his finger and he says, I don't want you to just give him to me. That little puppy right there is worth every bit as much as all the other little dogs, and I'll pay full price. In fact, I'll give you $2.37 now and 50 cents a month until I have him paid for. Store owner says, nah, you don't want to buy that little dog. He's never going to be able to run and jump and play with you like the other little puppies. In response to that, the little boy reaches down. He pulls up his pant leg to reveal a badly twisted left leg, supported by a big steel splint, a big steel brace going down each side of his leg. The little physically challenged kid looks up at the store owner and he says, well, sir, I don't really run so well myself, and the little puppy will need someone who understands.
Wow.
There's no reason to be a bigot, to be racist, to be sexist. We just need to come together. Like we said earlier in the show, the same God who made you made me too. We're really brothers and sisters. You know what? I had a chance to go up into space. We need to talk about that. I've flown all the fighter jets in the Air Force, all the bombers. I soared to the edge of space in a U-2 reconnaissance plane.
Wow.
And it changed
Let's
my
talk
whole
about
life.
that. What was that like?
Well,
were you scared?
Nah.
Did you have to prepare a long time to be able to do that?
You know, I've been to Afghanistan, Iraq, downrange, as we say, firing up the troops on 8 different military tribute tours. Brandon and I are already starting to scheme about taking the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders in October over to Iraq, Afghanistan. Talk about separation from the military, entrepreneurship,
I love that.
Suicide prevention, relationships. Brandon's the key.
Why the flying? I didn't see it because you played football, then you became the speaker.
Yeah, but what happened is
where'd the flying come in?
Well, it's the only way I can serve my country. So since July of 2001, I've spoken to every single class of Squadron Officer School at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama for the United States Air Force. That's Air University. Oh, wow. So over the course of all those years, I've given over 350 speeches. Eventually, they come to me and say, Clark, what can we do for you? We know what your speaker's fee is. You've always donated your time, no fee involved. So I say, yeah, I want to fly in an F-16. I want to fly with the Thunderbirds. I want to fly the bombers. I want to go up in the B-2 stealth. I want to fly all these. So I've flown all the fighter jets that have 2 seats, all except the F-35 and the F-22, all of them, and all the bombers.
Hornet?
Oh, yeah. So I
That's
flew the
unbelievable.
F-18
Wow.
Super Hornet. I've flown off aircraft carriers. I've had great times. So talk about networking at the highest level. Brandon inspires all of us to do that.
I'm trying.
He-
not
no,
catching up
you-
to you. I mean, that's
But we've got to
that's
interview
insane.
at some point how to get in the door. How do you develop a trusting relationship? How do you get these superstars to connect with you man to man instead of superstar celebrity to superstar businessman? And that's what I've been able to do as well. So, long story shorter, when you look at life as a bank and you deposit, eventually when you want to withdraw, people and resources come to the rescue. You've perfected that. You inspire all of us to follow in your footsteps. I've been able to do that. So I run into a general who so many times I'd volunteered to speak for his troops. He's in the Pentagon. I'm back there for one of my meetings. And he goes, hey, Clark, I've just got sent, my new command is Beale Air Force Base. Would you come and speak to my troops? I'm like, that's where the U-2 spy plane is based. He goes, yeah. I said, yeah, I'll come if you'll let me, fly in a U-2. What's he going to say? He goes, yeah, let's see if we can do it. It required a presidential signature. No other civilians really get a chance to go up into space. So I had to lose 37 pounds to do it. I had 2 months to do it. Talk about goal setting, focus. And I show up on the 22nd of October, went through this whole day of training, October 23rd, fit me in my spacesuit. Go to YouTube, Dan Clark, U-2 spy plane. You can see the 15-minute documentary. And I've got a gajillion views on it.
You went up in space?
Yeah, and I took the video camera inside. So we soared to the edge of space. It's a classified mission, so I can only tell you this. At 70,000 feet above the Earth's surface, you see 2/3 of the state of California. At 80,000 feet, you see mapped outlines of America. And at 90,000 feet, you tear up and believe you can reach out and touch the face of God. It was a spiritual experience I wish everyone could have. So for almost 5 hours, I sat in the sounds of silence, looking at the curvature of the earth, gazing into the endless blackness of the universe, pondering eternity. And I grew deeper in my faith and my curiosity of creation than I had ever had in my life. Because as I sat there and I clicked off the hot mic, so I had no real-time communication with my commander, just myself, I teared up a few times, just looking around, just going, you got to be kidding me. Wow. And I started asking myself, are we more than mere mortal beings living on a small planet for a short season? What's it really all about?
What was your answer to that?
When we landed, I realized that everything we can take with us when we die, I had aboard with me on that aircraft. My education. Think about it. As we laughed, 7th grade was my senior year. I wasn't on the honor roll every time. One time I came home with a report card, had 4 F's and 1 D on it. My dad's response, son, looks to me like you're spending too much time on one subject. So we have the same similar paths in our education. What I discovered is education is way overrated. Knowledge is power, but knowledge has no heart. All the information in the world isn't going to make a person successful. It's like the guy who has 3 PhDs, one in philosophy, one in psychology, one in sociology. He doesn't have a job, but at least he can explain why. We don't learn to know, we learn to do. Reason leads to conclusions, but it is emotion that leads to action. That's the secret to sales and sports marketing.
Are you a fan of going to college for kids today?
Absolutely, but take relevant classes that will help you become a better human being, character-based, leadership, entrepreneurship, taking action, discipline. The reason why you go to college is to prove to the world and to yourself that you're willing to do something that you really don't want to do. And you can show the world, here's my diploma. I actually jumped through the hoops and I didn't want to be there. I fulfilled all my requirements. I paid my bills, and now hire me because I have knowledge and wisdom that's completely obsolete that I learned from a book. But I had enough human experience and hung around with the 5 people whom I know I must continuously associate with the most that will make me the man and woman.
Those 5 people may have made it worth it.
Exactly. And how many companies do we know whose history of the beginning of that entrepreneurial enterprise, the Zurbuck, the Facebooks, they started with their buddies in college. Bill Gates, all the guys. Yeah. Okay, so education. Number 2, our character. Adversity introduces us to ourselves. No one will ever know how good we are until we're tested, until being strong is our only choice. So I'm paralyzed for 14 months. 16 doctors told me I would never get better. People ask me, why did you go to so many different doctors? I ended up with Frank Jobe, who did the Tommy John surgery in Centinela Hospital in Inglewood, California. He
How'd
was
you end
my
up with him?
physician because it was a referral, and he's the Dodgers doctor, and I'm an athlete, and I've my eye drooped, I had loss of speech, my arm dangled at my side, I severed the axillary nerve in my right deltoid muscle, compressed my 7th cervical bone. I was a chocolate mess. But what I discovered was I went to as many doctors as I needed to until I found one who believed I would get better. Faith, trusting, predictability, who believed I would get better. Again,
Would you
the
consider
doctor.
yourself a faithful person?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Define faith for me.
I will in a second, because the third thing we can take with us when we die is our conviction. It is our belief. And it is that my simple religious tradition indicates that, perhaps without offending anyone, religion is for those who are afraid to go to hell. Spirituality is for those of us who have already been there. That a spiritual being is so critically important, and all of us are spiritual beings having a physical experience on what we call life, on what we call earth. And for some reason, if we believe in God and act accordingly and hold ourselves to a higher standard of faith, faith without works is dead, so you have to have faith, and there's no God, we're still better off than those who did not believe in God and just made their own policies and just did whatever they felt was right.
So faith is a very important ingredient.
Because it holds us to that obedience. First law of the universe is also the first law of heaven. Those 10 commandments. Do you know what's happening right now? Let's just talk this way for example.
What's happening right now? Because
So-
I don't know. Because all I do is I turn on the TV. If it's, you don't want to talk about Trump and our presidency, there's nothing to talk about.
Exactly.
It's terrible.
But so, you're Jewish, I'm Christian, and we believe in the same God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. By the way, I've been to Abraham's childhood home in southern Iraq. I stood on the roof of his 37-room mansion, looked over the wall, and saw Ur of the Chaldeans described in Deuteronomy. Unbelievable experience. The same God who made you made me too. We both believe in the God of Abraham. Well, you think about this for a second. One of the 10 commandments says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image." Something that we relate to and agree on in our religious tradition. What's happening right now in our world, without throwing the millennials under the bus, is God wouldn't do that. Nah, God would never say that. No, God wouldn't have had that policy. And they're inventing their own version of God. So when I'm on the road and someone asks me at all times, at least once a day, someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, Clark, I don't believe in God." I always smile and I say, "Really? What version of God is it that you don't believe in? There's so many. There's a really good chance that I don't believe in the same God that you don't believe in either." So we have to focus in on what our belief is. And you can call it our source, the supreme being. You can call your version of the creator, whatever you want to call him. But what I believe is that if we sit here in your amazing office, there are not 4 gods in heaven arguing about doctrine. There's not a Jewish God, a Christian God, an Islam God.
Sure, we believe there's one God.
Exactly. And they're not saying who's the chosen people, who are we going to bless. There's one God, and the same God who made you made me too. So that brings me to the 4th thing that I learned that we can take with us when we die. After my excursion
What
into
was
space,
the first 3 again?
our education, we don't learn to know, we learn to do. Our character, adversity introduces us to ourselves. Once we answer why, figuring out the how-to is pretty simple. It's not what happens to us, it's what we do with what happens to us that defines us. Number 3, our convictions. What do we really believe? You don't hit rock bottom, you hit rock belief. And the 4th one is our memory. When we die, we do not lose our memory. And we need a memory that we left people on earth in better shape than we found them. And so my mantra, which comes from one of my Gold Record songs, "I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again." Every single time we're around each other, we swap stories, we swap belly-aching laughs. We fight back the tears because of some of the inspirational stories. I love to hear about your relationship with your sweet mother, your entrepreneurial effort when you were just a young teenage boy, all these inspirational stories. But at the end of the day, I walk away from you, and I hope to God that you walk away from me always saying, "I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again." So the 4th thing we can take with us when we die is, did our lives matter? And that brings us to the difference between success and significance. I write speeches for a lot of celebrities. I've written 5 speeches for the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I wrote his TED Talk. You got to look it up. In my book, The Art of Significance, I highlight Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I highlight Magic Johnson. I highlight a few other celebrity superstar athletes and celebrities because they took their success to significance. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he has 5 children, 4 of whom graduated from college. His son Amir, he speaks 5 languages and graduated almost #1 in his class from medical school. Magic Johnson single-handedly revitalized the inner city of LA, the Nokia Center, the entrepreneurship right around the Staples Center. He built movie theaters and hired these young kids who needed jobs to get off the streets. These individuals are more than superstar athletes. They're the Mariano Rivera's who become your best friends, not because he had a cutter, but because he's an extraordinary human being who loves you for Brandon Steiner, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. That's the single most significant thing we can take with us when we die. Did my life matter? Did I leave a legacy so people actually say, I like me best when I'm with you, I want to see you again?
I love that. I remember you taking me through a bunch of songs you've written, but I just got to go back to one thing. What do we instill, if you could instill something in people, what can we instill? Because, you think about it, you go to grade school, 12 years, and nobody talks about leaving this place better than when we found it. Maybe some ethics or philosophy course that, you take and basically gut, easy class, and you just take it, and maybe you find out that's probably the most important class you take. But
yeah, I graduated with 183 hours of racquetball. How about you?
Well, basketball, tennis, certainly got those credits in there. I get my GPA up. Those were A's at least. I got some A's, tennis, racquetball, but I never got caught up in the grades. And I did try to focus on stuff that was going to be significant to me that I may need later on, which is hard when you're in college between the beer and the parties to start thinking about where you want to be 5-10 years. And maybe some of this stuff may come in handy. Cost accounting, this, that. But I'm just wondering, are our schools failing us? Can we be inserting more things that are relevant back to the nucleus and core of some of our kids to talk to them about what's really important in business ethics, which seem to be glossed out the window, like with a Trump leading the way. I get why some of the stuff that Trump's doing actually is important, and some of the things are insane and everything else. He's the president, but it's the business ethics, the message about, hey, you do something even though it's wrong, but because you can get away with it. Like, that's the message we're sending to our right? So what do we insert to our kids?
Let me use an
my
example.
biggest concern, so that this world is better.
I agree. So, as I said earlier, I'm in town to speak for Citadel in Greenwich, Connecticut. Huge.
Why Citadel?
Amazing. They're just an amazing company. But here's my connection, which answers your question and adds to the conversation. A gentleman by the name of Damon Suter, who works for Citadel, who's a trader, big money guy, great guy. He lives in Orange County, California. He's heard me speak on 2 different occasions in the oil and gas industry. He comes to me and he says, will you speak to my son's private Catholic high school, Servite, Servite, Servite High School in Anaheim, California? And I'm like, yeah, but I would never charge to speak to a bunch of kids. Why don't you bring me in to speak to Citadel so you can pay my speaker's fee, and then I'll speak to your kids. So we worked out this package deal, and now I'm keeping that second part of the commitment to speak to Citadel to 80 of their superstar leaders. A couple of weeks ago, I flew into Anaheim to speak at Servite High School.
How was that?
Here's the answer to your question. There's about 920, maybe 1,000 young men, ages, well, it's 9th grade to 12th grade, so ages 15, maybe 14 to 18. And they win championships in football, and they just won the California championship in water polo and tennis and all these amazing sports. They have a theater department. Music department. I went in and spoke to the music teacher, the class about songwriting, because I got some gold records in country music. It was an extraordinary experience. They're all in uniforms, black and white uniforms. Black represents humility, white represents purity of thought. Go for it. And I saw the level of discipline, but in their curriculum, every day they have one complete class on leadership. They teach ethics. They put an emphasis on character development and those things that outlast a diploma, that actually makes Brandon Steiner who you are and hopefully who I am, that spill over into being a great spouse, a great significant other, a great friend, a great parent, a great community activist, a great philanthropist. And they have made it part of their curriculum. And I couldn't help but think, what would happen if every single public high school eliminated the social class and expenditure of my clothes are cooler than your clothes, and had everybody wear uniforms. Takes care of the gang killers and gang violence. We created the drug-free schools area and zone around high schools and middle schools, not just elementary schools. By the way, I was the guy in the Reagan White House who took Mrs. Reagan's Just Say No program to all the 50 states. So between 1983 and 1989, I spoke to over 6 million teenagers, averaged 9,000 a day, 3 schools a day.
You've been in the White House?
Absolutely. And I got the Presidential Service Award now. Presidential Service Award from President Reagan. I've dined with sheikhs and presidents. You know, you can go to my website. But my point is I'm in the White House.
Yeah, I love this guy.
With Mrs. Reagan. I took her Just Say No program to all 50 states, thousands and thousands of high schools between 1983 and 1989.
What drove you to do that?
Because it was a positive choices message, and at the same time we had a suicide pandemic in our country, which started to raise its ugly head again, so we have to get involved. Now here's my whole point. I went into all these schools. Do you realize that we could take care of what I was going to say is I was one of the 5 people in the White House who created the Red Ribbon Week in October. One of the 5 guys in the meeting who created the drug-free school zone. So when I drive around in October and I see the red ribbons tied on chain link fences around elementary schools, that's part of my legacy. I'm really proud of that. My point is this. If we taught those things as part of the curriculum instead of waited for parents or dysfunctional parents who don't have a clue to teach that because they never learned it, to perpetuate the negativity in our society and change that into a curriculum required character development. Let's talk about faith. Let's not make it religious. Let's talk about spirituality. Let's remove all these social stigmas and let's give this social correctness, this political correctness, a break.
2 things.
And change our system. Why not do that in the public system, not just in the private sector?
2 things. I did tell everybody that they're going to need to fasten their seatbelt in because you're going to be an earful. But I got to get these 2 things from you before we go. I want you to define faith. Mm-hmm. And then I want you to define purpose.
I'll go with purpose because I've read his book, Live on Purpose. And Brandon, I love metaphors. I love analogies. And you know that I created my parable of the kite, which taught the principle of obedience. You think about it.
I love that kite story. I'll be stealing that kite story.
The string holds the kite up. It doesn't hold the kite down. So if you're an athlete and you follow the training rules, you become free to be the athlete that you have been blessed to be. It's all about training and discipline. So a page from Live on Purpose from Brandon, you drew your tree and the roots are purpose. And everybody says you got to have passion, you got to have passion. And what did you explain to us? No, purpose
is the roots.
Is the roots, but what else do you add to purpose?
Commitment.
Commitment.
You got to have commitment
passion.
and then you get passion, not the other way around.
Okay. So purpose is defined as knowing what you believe, but more importantly, why you believe it. So think about this. One of my trips to the AOR, I'm downrange, and I'm engaged with thousands and thousands of our military troops. It's changed my life forever. My favorite part of those trips, which you're going to experience if we can pull this trip off in October,
we got to do it.
Is after hours when you got the bonfire going, you're in Kandahar with the Special Forces, you're in Djibouti with the Navy SEALs, doesn't matter. And in one of these experiences, a Navy SEAL said, an armored up warrior never has to get ready, he stays ready.
I would say if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
See, that's awesome. And Winston Churchill, beginning of World War II, this is a long answer to your simple question about purpose. Winston Churchill is the new Prime Minister of England. Nazi Germany is taking over Europe. Austria's fallen, Poland's fallen, they've bombed the complete shimoli out of France. And now the Battle of Britain, and Prime Minister Winston Churchill is forced into an underground bunker, and his only access to his people to keep them inspired is a microphone. Whoa, podcast, think about this. And Winston Churchill says, it is not enough to say I will do my best. We must succeed in doing that which is necessary. And our buddy Lou Holtz, he uses the acronym WIN, what's important now. What is necessary is what's important now. We've gone full circle. Where am I right now? To get an Uber ride over to your house, I had to identify my current location. If you lie about where you are, the directions won't work. But now, the defining moment, one of my greatest concoctions, under pressure, you don't step up your game. You succumb to the level of your training, preparation, and practice, which means pressure is not something that is naturally there. It's created when you question your own ability. And when you know what you've been trained to do, there's never any pressure.
And if you believe in your strategy.
See? So why does Riviera want the ball as a closer?
He's confident.
Why did Michael Jordan want to be the guy taking the last shot? Even though there was a propensity for him to miss 9,000 shots and fail, as we've heard his quote, because he had trained and practiced so much. But what allowed him to train was his purpose. Why am I going to be the best on the team? Larry Bird came to practice early, stayed late, so did Michael Jordan. It wasn't in their contract. Where do they come from? In the military, we give medals to those who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may live. And in business, we give bonuses to those who are willing to sacrifice others so that they may survive. A great Simon Sinek quote, one of my buddies. We have the same publisher in
I'd
Penguin.
like to meet Simon, by the way.
Oh, yeah, we'll arrange that.
I'm putting that on my list of things.
Oh, yeah, he's one of the
here.
greats. And
He's
can you
just
imagine
tremendous.
the program with all the three of us on there
He's just
interacting for a
tremendous.
half a
His
day?
views are tremendous.
I love it.
He's
Yeah,
a really
one of the
smart
great
guy.
gurus of our life. But purpose is defining why we do what we do. So I stayed paralyzed for 14 months because I confused who I was with what I did. I thought I was a football player when in reality that's just what I did, not who I am as a man. And when we identify ourselves in terms of what we do instead of who we are, we become a human doing instead of a human being. Unacceptable of success and significance is what we seek. But the reason why I stayed paralyzed for 14 months was because I was asking the wrong questions. I was asking the doctors how to get better when I should have been asking myself why. Once we answer why, enduring the pain of
So
rehabilitation
why
takes
you
care
got
of
better
itself.
superseded everything? Once you
Absolutely.
decide you wanted to get better?
I had to have a purpose. What am I going to do when I get better? What lessons of life do I need to learn? Well, I learned pain is a signal to grow, not to suffer. Once we learn the lesson the pain teaches us, the pain goes away. So in life, there's no lesson, there's no mistakes, only lessons. I would have never learned that life lesson had I not first and foremost been unveiled to myself the power of purpose. So purpose is, why do we, the cool question to ask people in a business, if I came into your office and you gave me access to every employee, I'd say, tell me about this place. If they only describe the action in this enterprise, that's a shallow answer. But if they can give me the reason why they work for Steiner Sports, why are they here? Why would you catch a red eye and get to work early so you could make a difference instead of kicking back and going, didn't you see the weather report? Man, I couldn't get here till 1 p.m. Like, no, I know better. Why is the purpose? We've identified that. The definition of faith, I feel like I'm in a beauty pageant because I started with purpose because my mind was going 100 miles an hour trying to figure out what the hell faith means to me. Faith in the scriptures is it's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. But in my mind, let's just describe faith. Okay, you're Jewish, I'm a Christian. I understand the celebration of Christmas, and I also understand the celebration of Hanukkah, the miracle of the oil. And when I put out a blog during the holiday season, I always incorporate the celebration of Hanukkah.
You do a blog, by the way?
I do, but not religiously. I need to do that more often.
You have to do that more often. You should be blogging every week. What's wrong with you?
Hanukkah, looking at it, if you're not of the Jewish tradition, Hanukkah is a reminder of the significance of faith and the miracle of the oil, which was so critically important in that phase of Jewish history, of the Israelite history. Is so motivating and inspirational to anyone from any religious tradition. The message of Christmas is very odd to me because Jesus was born in April. We know that because of the Jewish holidays of Passover and whatever. He wasn't born in December. Who are we
Imagine if we had Christmas in April.
Well, that's the whole point, brother. What I'm saying is Christmas is a state of mind.
Okay.
So in the Vietnam War era, before so many of you were born, they were religiously famous for calling off the war during Christmas. Put your guns away and let's celebrate Christmas. Oh, and then we'll start fighting in a couple of days. What would happen if the generals mixed up the day and they stopped fighting the day before Christmas or stopped fighting the day after Christmas? Which means We can make Christmas any day we want. Why not make it a 365-day-a-year celebration? And instead of making it a Christian holiday, why not drag in Santa Claus? Because what I blogged about one time that I got so much response on, the blog title was I Saw Santa Claus. And as you read, I say, everybody needs to believe in Santa Claus. Why? I've never seen him come down the chimney or go back up the smoke hole and fire up his tiny, mooses in his UFO. The concept of Santa Claus is the same concept of Walt Disney. He didn't live long enough to see Disney World, but his brother Roy was interviewed at the celebration of the dedication of the opening, and the journalist in a famous interview said, "Isn't it a tragedy that Walt never saw Disney World?" And he said, "Oh yeah, he saw it. Seeing is not believing. Believing is seeing." So when it comes to faith, what we have to understand is that it's action. We have to take action.
I love
Believing has nothing to do with faith.
Like, you don't have to be great to start, but you got to be start to great.
You got it. See, perfect.
To be great.
See,
I love that line,
See, you started your business based on faith, but most people think faith is religious. Just like we think repentance is religious. No, repentance is learning from the past, figuring out what you learned that worked, what you learned that did not work, debriefing, and accelerating your new plan of attack. So we need to repent every day of our lives.
All right, Dan, I got to let you go.
No.
This is unbelievable.
Enough of him.
You remind me,
you to tune in.
Dan, you remind me, though, this is what happened with John Gray. John Gray came up here, legendary, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and we were supposed to do just a short blog, and we ended up doing 3 hours. And I'm still unraveling. That was like 4 years ago. Priceless. I feel this is priceless. I can go on and on. I mean, Ben, what are we going to do with all this material?
I want you on my radio show too, please. I want you on my radio show.
I think I was on. Was I on once?
No, voiceamerica.com. It's the influencers channel, and I need to accelerate that into a video radio program because it's on. You can get it on demand.
That's what I love about this is that you get this in a pod.
I know this is so good, but
live.
I don't have $100,000 to throw at a studio. I'm still.
No, it's not that expensive.
I need a paper route and a night job just to pay attention.
Ben got coupons. He got coupons, and he went down the street, man. He bought some used equipment. We did. It didn't cost that much.
This microphone costs more than my car.
We had faith.
Man.
We had faith. Like, we didn't know what we were doing. We were working off one camera. And we went up to someone else's studio, which most of the other people that do this stuff don't do it right.
I agree.
And we found somebody that did do it right, and we're like, something, we got to do it right, and we got to do it better. And was that hard, right? Yeah, figured it out. Got one of my friends who does the graffiti, do a little backdrop. I was able to do this. This is my contribution. So I want to make sure I have the brick, a little dirt. Want to make sure that people understand you have to have big, big
and
shoes.
And the S on your Syracuse helmet stood for psychology. I know the stories.
No, that S stands for savings.
See, you've already taught me, brother.
You want to be wealthy one day. Don't worry about being rich. Worry about saving. Saving's important.
So may I just add with one last little thought?
Think out of the box.
Let me conclude by just adding a little bit of wisdom.
I
learned the significance of time while I was in space. Today, you've never been this old before, and today, you'll never be this young again. So right now matters, and every right now matters, which means no matter what your past has been, you have a spotless future, which means you can't always control what happens, but you can always control what happens next, which means the challenge is when you click off this podcast, what are you going to do with any of the information or the nuggets of wisdom that we've bounced off of one another in this time together? And to solidify the significance of one moment in time, may I share one of my favorite experiences. I was on the program with Henry Winkler, the Fonzie from Happy Days. Clearly one of the funniest guys I've ever met. For some of you who are so young and you didn't know Happy Days,
go watch a couple
episode. Guy who
episodes.
Ever lived.
Hey.
He and I finished our speeches, and he decides he wants to take some time off, treat himself to a matinee movie. So Henry Winkler slides in through the side exit door of the theater, and as he's shuffling himself through the aisle, he finds himself a vacant seat. As Henry Winkler turns to sit down in the chair to look up at the movie screen, the little girl sitting right behind him smiles this giant smile. She points her finger and she slowly says, "Fonzie." Henry Winkler immediately snaps into the Fonzie character from Happy Days. Hey, whoa. And the lady sitting next to the little girl passes out. Henry Winkler milks the moment. Whoa, I thought this only happened on TV drama. Hey, how cool is this? Yay, whoa. The theater manager comes out, takes care of the woman's needs. She's lying in the aisle, cold pack on her forehead. She's asked one question: why did you pass out? She said, my little girl is autistic. And that is the very first word she has ever spoken in her entire life. Time matters. And what I've learned from you, and every single time we've been together as one of my great friends on the planet, Brandon, it's all about support. And because the story remembers when, the song remembers when, a mother encourages her daughter to come home as soon as school is over. Time comes, the time goes. 30 minutes later, daughter walks in through the front door of her home and her mother scolds her. Where have you been? I've been worried sick. She says, oh, Mommy, I walked my friend Sally home. She dropped her doll on the sidewalk and broke all to pieces. It was awful. Her mother said, so you're late because you stayed to help your friend pick up the pieces of the doll and put it back together again? She said, oh, no, Mommy, I didn't know how to fix the doll. I just stayed to help her cry. Buy my books. I need the money. I want a studio like this so I can have my podcast at this level.
Dude, you
I
coming
love
back?
you, dude.
I just want to know one thing.
Absolutely.
I want to get it on tape. You're coming back, right?
Yes, sir. I can't wait.